Hey everyone, welcome back to our Techstrong TV live coverage of Black Hat 2024. A day and a half in, we've got our first AppSec, genuine AppSec interview where we can talk AppSec, which for those of you who are security people, you may find that a little weird. This is Black Hat, it's the AppSec hacking conference. It's not, everything under the sun security. But for whatever reason, that's the state of Black Hat. We could talk more about it. But we're thrilled to have back with us this gentleman right here. His name's Jeff Williams. Jeff is the CTO. I've made that mistake before with you.
It's fine.
At Contrast Security, and it's always a pleasure to have him on. But we've got more. Joining us from IDC, Katie Norton.
You got it.
With the green hair. She's an Eagles fan. We won't hold it against her. Joining us, Katie, welcome. I know this is your first time on Techstrong TV. Yeah, it's great to have you on here. Yeah. So, Jeff, I'm going to let you start the kickoff and everything. But before we get to that, a little bit about you and what you do at IDC, maybe. You're new to our audience. Introduce yourself.
Yeah, I'm a research manager at IDC, and I cover the DevSecOps software supply chain security tools world. So everything developer and SDLC and how security is integrated into that.
Love it. Jeff, Contrast Security needs no introduction to our audience. As I was telling you, we love having Larry Mascheroni in everything we do. I think I invite him to every event we do. But maybe there are some people who aren't familiar with Contrast. So before we get to the topic of discussion today, maybe a quick Contrast background.
Yeah, sure. So, we started Contrast because we saw so many big enterprises struggling with application and API security. They, spent a lot of money on scanners and web app firewalls and, big teams to deal with the false positives and all that. It was just, ultimately, those organizations were not producing a lot of value. What they did generate was a huge backlog of vulnerabilities. And I just saw a study from Ponymon that said the average enterprise has 1.1 million vulnerabilities in their application security backlog. That's not success. That's not working. So we have a different approach. We instrument the application a little bit like an APM tool, but for security. And we watch the code as it runs, and we'll tell you if there's vulnerabilities or library problems, and in production, we'll stop attacks.
Excellent. Yeah. Excellent. And that's what the game is about. I had, Brian Fox from Sonatype was here this morning. We were talking about the difference between vulnerabilities and malicious, vulnerable and malicious.
Oh, yeah, I disagree with him about that. We've had some arguments.
Have you? I wish I would have known it.
We
had you both on, and we could have done
PowerPoint,
counterpoint. Yeah. Well, we're going to be doing some videos on that with him, and I'm going to invite you to one.
Excellent.
That'll be fun.
Can't wait for the fireworks.
All right. But let's get back to the instant at hand here. So we're at Black Hat. It's an AppSec show, Contrast Security, AppSec company, and you mentioned APIs, right? And
I did.
It's funny, API security kind of burst on the scene maybe 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah.
It's gone a little quiet. I think some of the pure play API guys.
Most people are realizing that it's really just application security applied to a different kind of application.
Exactly.
And it's all the same stuff. So, we treat it like one thing, same tools, same technology, all as one. You don't want to have a bunch of separate tools doing essentially the same thing.
Is that an IDC agreement?
No, yeah. And actually what I was going to say is I think that there's been really a shift in APIs. It very much started on the protection, really on the runtime side of things, and we've recognized, and this kind of goes to what we're going to keep talking about here, is this: you can't understand the code apart from the runtime, and that we're more and more need to be able to bring these two things together. And so, for me, API security has really been trying to understand it, and the shift has been understanding it in the development process more than even just what's happening in the runtime and bringing those two things together.
So it was almost an artificial distinction, let's say, between like BC and AD, before 100%. Deployment, after deployment. And, I like what you said, Jeff. I think it is. It's AppSec, just a different not venue, a different path, if you will. Anyway, though, let's turn. You guys made a big announcement yesterday.
Yeah, we did.
Functionality. Let's I'm turning it over to you, Jeff. Tell them. Share.
Yeah, so we noticed that there's a big problem in production environments, like Katie was talking about, that for AppSec and APISec, people really don't have visibility into what's going on in production in their apps and APIs from a security perspective. They don't see attacks. They don't, all they get is maybe a little bit of telemetry from their WAF, which is a lot of false positives
anymore.
Well, everybody has them, but they're mostly turned off. But nobody uses the telemetry because it's the WAF doesn't know anything about what it's protecting.
The APIs the API traffic, which is the majority of internet traffic today, right, goes under the radar there.
Yeah, that's right. So we announced something we're calling Application Detection and Response, ADR. Okay. And if you think about how other parts of cybersecurity work with like EDR, endpoint detection and response, and cloud detection and response, and so on, there's a bunch of DRs. But there's this big gap at the application layer. And so we're filling that gap. We've got a great offering that allows you to instrument your applications. They watch for attacks in production. And when we see one, we can share the telemetry about it, the full context of it, which we were talking about a little bit, and prevent that exploit from harming your applications and APIs. So we're really excited about it. We think it's a big gap in the cybersecurity landscape, and it fits right into the way that security works in operations. XDR platforms taking all the data from ADR, CDR, ADR, so on, and building that picture that the SOC analysts use.
I love it. Katie.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah, it goes to almost that artificial gap you were just talking about, or line between before and after deployment. This is like almost an even bigger chasm, I think, that we're crossing and bringing together of like what's happening in the SOC and what's happening with developers, and it's this like huge lever that needs to be pulled in the larger prioritization problem to the 1 point, whatever million in vulnerabilities. We've seen that you can't understand, you can't prioritize what you need to do just with code context. And so we've added runtime, we've seen things like code reachability, exploitability, all sorts of things, business context, to be able to try to better narrow down this list of things that need to be addressed, particularly from the development perspective. And now, like, this is such a huge gap. It's like an even higher order of like, okay, your application is under attack, and the security analyst doesn't have the application context to be able to even pass back to the developer what to fix. They might be able to say, pull a lever, close this off, shut this down to like temporarily stop this, but ultimately there's something that our part, the resolution and of what needs to be fixed. And that's got to go, when it's related to the application, back to development. And so this shared knowledge, this chasm that has to close between what's happening in the SOC and what's happening in development. And that's where I see this ADR really bringing these two areas to work together a little more collaboratively.
DevOps is all about breaking down silos.
That's right.
And we generally think of it as the development ops silos that get broken here, right? Or that we hopefully break down those silos, those walls. With the advent of DevSecOps, we're breaking down that silo too.
Yeah, Katie and I were talking about that on the way over here. I just want to make one observation. So, DevOps was pretty good at breaking down the boundaries between dev and ops. But DevSecOps didn't do that for security. It didn't break down the silos between security and dev and ops, really. But I think... Well, I think it's just the security tools and teams have their own way of working. And I think actually the tools reinforce those patterns. Are kind of weird. Well, they clearly are, and I'm right there. But like the way that those tools work and teams work, they create silos. They naturally create silos because they create this huge backlog that nobody wants to touch. And so they're like, well, let's have a group over there that manages that giant pile of stuff nobody wants to fix.
And many security folks, especially in the SOC, like the app's not my problem. When you bring up the app to them, in the engagements I've had, that it's like it's almost...
No, that's right. That's exactly
hands up.
We have to empower them to deal with application and API incidents that happen in production. Log4Shell is one example. That's like a library example, but there's plenty of examples of custom code getting exploited. And we can't communicate with the operations team in the same language. We can't use words like vulnerability and remediation and backlog and testing and all that. They need a run book that talks about events and incidents that correlates with their events that are already in their SIM or their XDR. So that's the big thing that ADR is creating, is that translation of AppSec into operations.
It kind of reminds me of when CISOs first became a thing, right? What was the CISO's job? Well, it wasn't just to manage the security team or architect security architecture. The CISO was there as a translator to take vulnerability and intrusion speak and turn it into business talk.
Yeah.
That his fellow, assuming you think CISOs are really on that C level, that his fellow CISOs or her fellow CISOs could understand. And that took a moment, right, to do that translation. You're talking about yet another boundary layer where we translate. So I've been in DevSecOps since before we called it DevSecOps. The first time I did that show at RSA, my annual DevSecOps, I actually called it Rugged DevOps.
Oh, right. Yeah,
it wasn't DevSecOps yet.
We just launched that Rugged.
Did James
Rugged
Wicked and those
software,
guys. Yeah, Rugged. I think one of the lessons learned, and probably the hard way, was that developers will never be security pros.
That's right.
They're just, it doesn't make them bad people. They're not security pros. And to your point, security pros are never going to be developers.
Yeah.
No?
And as I've gotten older, and I've gotten old, I've learned you take people for who and what they are. And don't try to fit that square peg into the round hole. The key is it's like being at the UN and everybody puts on their little translator
That's a great
thingies,
analogy.
right?
Yeah.
You got to be able to, they've got to talk a common language.
You got to make the tools work, and I think that's what's such an important part. And I think what Contrast is doing is really interesting, is because to be able to, to create, you have to create a product that you understand how to speak both languages, and also to be able to provide the data in the way that that persona is going to understand it. And it's super important to not, this is an area that bleeds again between just, really that SecOps part. We've shift left and DevSec, we've brought those together a little bit. It's that Sec and Ops part that need to come closer together and learn how to communicate with each other to kind of complete the full loop.
There's one other huge part of that conversation that's really breaking down the ability for those teams to work together, and it's the accuracy of the data. And it just, in AppSec, the data from WAFs and from static scanners and dynamic scanners and SCA tools is super noisy. And so if you try to just hand that to developers, they'll throw their hands up and say, "What? I can't fix all this." And 90% of the time, it's a false positive, and they just this is just a waste of my time. So by watching applications run in production and APIs run in production, we can get really good, we call it security observability. And we build a picture of how those applications actually work, and then we can say what's real in production. So when we take that and show it to developers, they'll know what's real and can focus on fixing it. And I use the analogy, the movie Cars, Doc Hudson, when he's teaching Lightning McQueen not to drive off the track, and he says, "You got to turn right to go left."
Yeah.
That's what we're doing here. We got to get some data from production, and then we got to use that data in production to inform the decisions that developers have to make. So we're turning right to achieve the goals of shift left, which frankly, haven't really produced any change in the market.
So let me make sure I got this right then. This is a tool for security people to help the ops folks.
It's important to recognize that security can't be in the critical path of software development and production operations. can't. It's just that pipeline has to move much faster than that. It's got to be minutes, right?
Seconds.
So we've got to enable the developers to do it on their own. And to do that, we've got to get accurate information from operations, stop attacks in operations to give development cover, and then give them contextual findings so that they can make the right fix on stuff that matters right away. That's how we get these 3 teams working together, because now the goals are shared.
So I think this was another fundamental mistake we made in DevSecOps early on, is that we had security people create security tools for developers.
Yeah.
And then we said, geez, I wonder why that didn't work.
Well, I call that shitting left, right?
Yeah,
You
we've
can
had
censor
this
that out,
discussion.
but
No, we're live. Can't censor anything. He said it, not me.
Yeah.
But that's the truth. I mean, that didn't work. And there was a lot of venture capital dollars that went down the drain with companies that made security tools.
It worked if the
developers.
goal was to generate a 1.1 million vulnerability backlog.
Yeah.
That's
or
not
to
working.
just piss off developers who get
Did that too.
desensitized to it and say, I'm done. I'm
Right.
done.
And the amount of time that developers, and research I've done, that developers are spending on security-related tasks, but yet when in some of my survey work, time and time again, developer security knowledge comes up as like one of the top problems. And I think as we see, year over year over year, that surfaces, and that hasn't changed. And I think it goes back to your point of like, I don't think. It's like, yes, training is important, just like we should all have phishing training and all of that kind of stuff, but we have to have the tools that enable the work, like in the context and the flow of how development's being done, and make it easy so that developers don't have to be. I think the expectation of developers to be a security expert is really where things,
We went off the rails.
where it went, or we
You can't train
shifted
your way
right
out of
and we're
this.
not going back, and that it's, you need to get that right information at the right time in the right context, and make it easy for them to make the fix to make this whole flow work the right way.
Agreed. Jeff, you said something I want to dig in a little more on, if it's okay. Working with ops to stop what's the attack right now, stop the bleeding right now, while we get it over to dev to kind of make that permanent fix.
Right.
How are we stopping the bleeding?
So the way that Contrast ADR works is by instrumenting the application. So we put security sensors in that watch the application or API run, and we can see an attack when it happens. And unlike a WAF, which tries to block it at the perimeter and without context, it's going to make a lot of mistakes. It's going to break applications and miss attacks and stuff. Instead, we see how the application handles that data. So for a SQL injection attack, for example, we'll see that attack go through the application, get into the SQL query, and modify the meaning of the query. That's when we intervene, and because we know it's an attack. We know that no one should ever modify the meaning of your queries. Right. So if we see it, we know it's an attack. So that's when we intervene. We throw an exception, which keeps the application from sending that query to the database. Database stays safe. Application keeps running perfectly, and you get all the telemetry. So now you can feed that upstream to your XDR or whatever. You can piece all the events together from, maybe the attacker is attacking different parts of your system, and you're like, hey, that IP address is really bad. We got to watch that. But that's how we keep everything safe while also informing everybody.
I love it. Any pushback on that piece of it? Because I know people get a little freaky sometimes about automated defense like that.
Yeah.
Though it's more accepted now than it was when I was starting Still Secure and trying to sell that stuff.
We're following the star DR model, the XDR model here, and ops teams are very comfortable installing EDR on endpoints and CDR on their cloud and SDR on their servers, and application DR is exactly the same model. It's you add contrast to your application layer, it monitors for attacks, and it stops them and keeps you safe.
And I'm seeing it in my research as well, and in the conversations that I have with end user organizations, as well as in the survey research I do, where it's the overwhelm problem. Like I think the cover part of all of this is so important, because when you think about stuff like Log4j, and I know like you all had a great story there, and how you helped organizations with that. Like these fixes in many cases, especially like an open source, say if it's an open source problem, and like that's not, most of the time is not like an easy, like I'm gonna push a button and like and
Just like the
vulnerability
CrowdStrike
resolved,
fix.
right, exactly,
Right.
and then so developers need time to evaluate like what is the level of investment and time that is going to be on my part to be able to actually correct what the vulnerability is, and you can't do that while you continue to
Not-
put yourself
not when the
exposed.
fire's
And
raging.
you can't take your application down, so there has to be this intermediate between providing protection while also meeting the consumer demand for a flawlessly running application.
Agreed. No, that's why I kind of zeroed in on that, because that, it is a little bit of a finger in the dike kind of thing. It's not a permanent patch or something, but it takes the pressure. It's like a valve release. Right? It takes the pressure off. Now the developer doesn't have a gun to his head. I got to
No
fix
fire
this.
drills.
Right. It's not a fire drill.
Exactly
That's
right.
an excellent point. Excellent. Now, does this cost more money? Is it part of if I'm a contrast customer? Is it part of my suite? How is this packaged?
Yeah,
It just
so
came out yesterday, but what the heck?
No, we have two main product areas that we focus on. AST, which focuses on giving great telemetry to developers and helping them fix vulnerabilities and helping them get their open source straightened out.
Yeah.
Again, it's all runtime, so we monitor how the libraries are used. We don't overwhelm you. That's one product. You buy it per application,
Yep.
license it. And then we have ADR on the production side. So you can buy it. You can.
So this is a
It's actually
standalone
a-
product then.
It's actually a 1 + 1 = 3 because they use the same underpinning.
I got
but
it.
if you use it in dev, that's AST. If you use it in production, you got ADR. And really, when you put it together, that's when the magic really happens, and you can get a real DevSecOps program really
I
humming.
love it. Excellent. You got me. You had me at hello on this. I think it's a time. Sometimes you look at stuff and you say, "What took so long to come up with this?" Right?
That my colleague and I think when we were talking to you about this early on, we kind of both. I have a colleague that covers more XDR, right, from the security perspective. I'm the dev person, right, and we were both kind of looked at each other like, why doesn't this exist? Like
Yeah, no. And then you say to yourself, "Why didn't I think of this?" That's why I'm still working.
Right.
But,
But yeah, we see it, and as an analyst, it's an emerging space. But I'm having a lot of conversations from a variety of different perspectives in the market around this sort of gap around being able to bring, that DevSec and Ops, what's happening in production and that runtime concept, plus the attack and code, and being able to understand that all holistically to just better and more effectively be able to resolve vulnerabilities and have a more secure
And I
application.
should say, this is an evolution of our existing platform, and we've been supporting a lot of these use cases with Contrast for a number of years. So we've got hundreds of thousands of servers that we protect in production already, and we've been doing this for quite a long time. So this is proven technology. I know we're launching today, and we've added a bunch of things to really support the operations environment, but the technology is proven. We've been on really critical applications at some of the biggest companies in the world for a long time.
absolutely. People out here, Jeff, say, it sounds pretty good. I'd like to take it for a ride. I want to dig in. What should they do?
Yeah, reach out to us. The website's a good place to start if you want to learn a little more about it.
ContrastSecurity.com.
ContrastSecurity.com. And we've got some really good materials there. If you want to read about it, you can reach out to our team. And if you just have questions about anything about it, please reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm easy to find on LinkedIn.
Very easy to find on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Jeff's a hard guy to miss in person if you've never met Jeff in person. I'm a big guy, but I always feel small when I'm with Jeff. But sounds like a great tool. Congratulations to you and the whole Contrast team on this. It's going to be interesting to see, Katie, from an analyst
as
point
from an
of
analyst
view.
point of view, it's a space that I've really the last probably 3-4 months been starting to track, and I have a lot of hope for and feeling that we're going to see these sort of capabilities, evolve in throughout the market in different places. I think the recognition of this is a big missing piece of information that could really help those workflows be more effective and efficient.
I do want to give a shout out to our launch partner Splunk. We're demoing our integrations with Splunk down in the
Oh, really?
booth
Very
today.
cool.
Yeah, and it's nice because I think that's how people are going to consume this information through the tools they're already using. So we've got ways to integrate with the tools people are already using in operations to manage their work.
Very cool. Splunk, part of Cisco. So, I mean, it sounds great. Everything sounds great about it. Let's talk about Black Hat a little bit. I know today's the first day that the exhibit hall's open, but people have been here. Jeff, you know from Black Hat. What's your impressions?
I mean, it seems super crowded. We had a lot of booth traffic this morning. Granted, we were giving away some Lego, Star Wars stuff, so there was raffles and so on. So there was a lot of people crowding the booth. But
Adult trick-or-treaters.
I'm going to say it's also the ADR message is a lot of people want to learn about that. In Black Hat, big picture, I've seen a lot of people talking about the open source problems. There's a lot of chatter about CrowdStrike and our dependence on monoculture and things like that. So I mean, it's an interesting time for AppSec.
I've had people in all day, and you get the usual. You're in security. We're all in security long enough. You get people moaning and groaning. There's nothing new. Nothing new. It's all just more of the same. We don't change the equation. And I keep telling people, I think you used the term earlier too, evolutionary, right? So much of what we do in security today is evolutionary, built on what came before, right? There's no magic bullets. This sounds like a great, right? Like you look at it and say, geez, why didn't I think of this? Of course, but it's not, none of it is, it all needs, as you said, it's the 1 + 1 = 3 aspect of these things that make it truly valuable.
I want to get Katie's opinion on this, but I'll tell you what I think is really the big change in the cybersecurity world is just the level of transparency that's being demanded in the market. So it's just, I don't know, 2 days ago or something, CISA issued its secure by demand. And in addition to its secure by design thing, it says secure by demand. And I think that the CISA is putting a lot of pressure on the software market to be transparent about cybersecurity in a way that's never happened before.
Absolutely.
And so things like
100%.
SBOMs and mandatory disclosures from OMB and so on, like those are little baby steps, but if you look at where they're pointed, it's where organizations are going to have to be transparent about what they're doing to secure the systems and software that we all trust everything that's important in our lives to. And that, to me, is something I've been pushing for decades. And I'm really glad to see it finally coming to fruition. And hopefully contracts can be a little part of that, where companies can get a hold of their applications and APIs and be transparent about what they're doing to secure those.
Well, look at CrowdStrike. I mean, that's not even it's not really a security issue, but even the level of transparency, like how, quickly they've been asked to explain. I mean, it was July 19th? We're not even a month from when that all happened.
And the lawsuits are filed.
Oh, right. And the lawsuits are filed. The final, rundown of it just came out the other day, I think, officially. And, that's a pretty quick turnaround that's expected of a company to be able to explain exactly what happened.
And props
what
to their
they're
CEO
do.
for being here,
Yeah.
talking about it.
Right.
I mean, that's,
So I'm going to tell you,
100%.
I
I
know
agree with
George. I know George a long time.
Yeah.
Foundstone. I remember when Foundstone was bought by McAfee. I was
yeah.
Still Secure. We had a product called VAM. Foundstone was kind of our big. Well, it was Foundstone and EI back then, where everyone thought Philippe Equalis was crazy because he was storing stuff not on-prem.
Right.
Right. He was talking about something. They didn't even call it cloud then. So I know George Kurtz a long time, and I've worked with him through McAfee. George is a great guy. He's a stand-up guy.
That's right.
And what happened to them, I tell you, it can happen to anyone. So
Definitely anybody messing with the kernel.
Now if you listen to Microsoft says, well, I told you not to let anyone mess with the kernel, EU, and EU forced us to do it. It happened. I get all that. But you're right, there is, again, we had this discussion in a couple of the interviews today. I'm not a big fan of, I'm from the government and I'm here to help. Right? I would rather we police ourselves. I would rather we didn't have government intervention. However, the CISA that we have today, certainly for the last 2-3 years, if not even when Chris, I forgot Chris's last name, who was at CISA and he got fired.
You mean the loft? Oh, you mean Dan Geer? No,
Dan Geer's old. He's my age. No, the guy Trump fired him. I forget his name. It'll come to me. I had him on here one time. Anyway, the last 4 or 5 years, CISA has really been sort of a beacon of good government industry cooperation, doing some common sense things that, because by doing it, it speeds up the adoption cycle of these kinds of technologies.
I think what they're trying to do, and they're just trying to do it, they got a long path ahead of them, but what they're trying to do is the least intrusive thing that government could do in the cybersecurity market. Forcing transparency is pretty much fair. Like companies, if they just disclose what they're currently doing, that's all we're asking. And that, I think that's a fair ask. I get much more concerned when they start talking about software liability, because that's going to create a whole regime of insurance and lawyers.
I mean,
lawsuits and
unfortunately,
negligence.
I think that's what you're going to see in this CrowdStrike thing, right? The lawyers are involved. The guy from Delta wants blood. In my mind, read your EULA, right? I don't think you got a case, but in any event, I do applaud them. The other thing I worry about, quite frankly, and I'm not looking to get into politics here, but CISA is an agency, a government agency. These guidelines and edicts they're putting out do not have congressional approval.
That's
so,
right.
you know, according to the latest Supreme Court rulings, these agencies have overstepped their bounds, and so is it going to be enforceable? Is it going to mean anything? When the next administration comes in, and again, I'm not getting into politics, but if they change things, does this roll back? We can't have a CISA cha-cha, 1 step forward, 2 steps back.
I think though like even just on the SBOM front, like it's gotten to the point now, like SBOM, saying the word SBOM isn't something like that somebody goes, what? Like when you say ADR, we're still getting the like, what are you talking about conversation. But when you say SBOM now, like most people know what you're talking about, both organizations and in the industry. And I'm hopeful at least that like we've come far enough as as an industry in acknowledging that like this, even if SBOM and some of the stuff that we've put in place with like CISA and the like, it doesn't end up being the way that it is and that it's regulated, that the underlying concepts of software transparency and the need for it will still like continue to move forward regardless of politics.
It's a fair point. There's massive energy trying to stifle transparency because it's really not in a lot of companies' best interest right now. Right. I think it actually, in long term, it's better for the market. Interest. But it's not better for an individual company who has to disclose stuff.
Look, I'll give you a reason. Do you remember the fights we used to have over responsible disclosure?
Oh, sure.
Right? Everybody, now we look at it and say, of course you do that. You don't just release a bug until you've given them notice. Right, let's call it that. But there was a time where that wasn't such a clear understanding. There were people who argued,
No, keep it quiet so the developer or the attackers can't get a hold of it.
Right, and so the hole will exist there for 12 years until one day.
I think transparency is unstoppable. I think it's like a thread. You start pulling it and you realize once you get the SBOM, you're like, wait a minute, this is just a list of ingredients. I don't know what the actual thing is. And I use this analogy. I'm like, you could give me the same ingredients as my mom to make an apple pie, and mine's going to come out garbage. Hers will be beautiful. But what matters is what you do with the ingredients.
Right.
And so, then you start asking those questions, like, well, what did you do with the ingredients? And, what's your threat model? What are the defenses in place? And, so people are starting to pull that thread, and vendors are getting pressure. We get asked for our SBOMs all the time.
Really?
And, yes, so we deliver SBOMs with everything.
I was just going to say, and I don't see anything wrong with that.
No, we're happy to disclose that because we're really careful about it. But there are a lot of companies that they have a lot of backlog, and then if you have a backlog, you can't. It's hard to be transparent when your house is dirty.
That's a great saying. I'm going to steal that. It's hard to be transparent when your house is dirty.
That's right.
But it's the truth too. It's so dead on. I mean, a lot of these companies. It's the old saying, if you didn't have anything to hide, you wouldn't worry about that illegal search and seizure. But a lot of companies do have something to hide.
I've just done a recent survey that is to be published, but questions around, like, I asked explicitly, like, are you releasing applications into production with known vulnerabilities, and like, what's the top reason for doing so? And the percentage that replied that they're not, like, we never do this, very low. And then most of the
And they're lying.
They're
The ones who do are
probably
lying.
2% that responded, you know, or, whatever it was, were lying, but. Like the top, it's all business. The top response was, you know, there's a business demand for this feature. The business need trumps, and that's got to shift. And I think transparency is all a big part of this.
You could try to mark up those vulnerabilities with Kev and say, well, it's not exploitable in our app, but it's really hard. That, like, Kevs are a good idea, but difficult to implement.
You know, I'm going to tell you, I remember I did a podcast 2008, 2009, that area. That time frame. I had the CEO of Mongo
Oh, yeah.
and the CEO of Couchbase. I think Couchbase had just merged with Couch and something else. Anyway, NoSQL databases are all the rage. And I asked both of them, I said, hey, a lot of people say NoSQL stands for no security. Because I was younger then. I said, what's the deal with security in your database products? And I'll never forget this. They actually had the nerve to say, look, we'll put in better security when our customers demand better security.
It's, you know, it's
And
not a
things haven't
crazy
changed.
point, because that's really what the SIS security by demand is trying to encourage, is the market has to ask for it.
Right.
And
And one customer in a market can't ask for it. But when the government says this is what you're going to do, it accelerates what would take the market 5 years.
They're trying to standardize how to ask that question, because right now people don't ask because it's complicated to ask the question in a fair way. But it will put some burden on vendors
Companies, yeah.
to produce the information. But if it's all one standard, you know, hey, here's like my 10 questions I want to know. Like,
Well, and that's why, yes, it'll put burden on vendors. But if you could standardize it, everybody's the better for it. And look, from your mouth to God's ears, I hope it works. Anyway, enjoy the rest of Black Hat, right? We've got another full day of this. You doing anything exciting tonight, guys? It's always good parties at Black Hat.
I've got some parties, but I'm also meeting with my whole team that's here and pulling the team together, because it's hard in the COVID era to get your whole
To
team
get
together.
in
So
person.
that's
No,
exciting.
I know. You got to take advantage of those moments.
Yep.
What about you? The wonderful, extravagant, crazy life of the analyst. What do you got going on?
A nap
nap.
after 10 hours of meetings.
She probably has to
today.
write some research reports.
Yeah, I
too.
do. The backlog is long.
So you're welcome to join us for dinner.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
We were supposed to be going to Rod Stewart. He was playing tonight at
Yeah.
Caesars, and I just got an email before you guys came up. He has strep throat.
Oh, no.
The show is canceled.
Oh no, it wasn't in the. You said the Sphere.
No, it's at Caesars.
Oh, okay. Yeah, actually.
The Sphere, the Dead are playing there last
She's
weekend.
going.
Oh, she's
going.
going. So had I known that, I would have stayed till Friday. Instead, I'm going home tomorrow. Yeah.
I'm bringing my dad. My
He's
dad.
so
My
mad.
dad's
Yeah,
coming.
Alan's
I
really
know.
mad. He's like,
I called my wife. I was like, why don't you jump on a plane? I'll just
Right.
cancel and we'll stay. She was like, no, you got to come home. But anyway, enjoy. I have a lot of friends who've gone to the show. It's amazing.
I've heard. I myself am not my dad that is joining me is the.
I
Grateful
can't
Dead
tell you how
fan, but
great
I
you're
can't
making
wait
me
to see
feel.
just
Every
the
time you say
visuals.
your dad loves this, I'm thinking, son of a.
Right. Whatever. It's like,
Yeah.
You know what? I've been following.
I'm trying to be
the
daughter
dad.
of the year here. Come on.
You're doing good, and your dad's gonna love the show because I heard they're playing.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
They're really jamming out, and that whole experience in there is just.
John
I've
Mayer
heard
with
it's
3
amazing.
fingers now.
I know.
He,
Oh, wow.
He crushed a finger in a car.
Yeah, he did.
Red.
But he's still amazing. I have friends who've been out multiple times and seen multiple shows of it. Every show is different.
Cool.
Enjoy.
I'll report
awesome.
back.
Yeah, please do. And this is their last weekend. If you don't catch them this weekend, that's it. The residency's over.
well, thank you for doing
Yeah.
this, Katie.
Yeah, of
Thanks,
course.
Alan,
Thanks
for
for
having
having
us.
me, both of you. This was a pleasure.
I'm supposed to thank you.
This is fun.
Absolutely. Jeff, it's always fun with you, man. Thank
Good to
you.
see you.
Congratulations on the launch of ADR. It's an important thing. Katie, a pleasure meeting you.
Always, yes.
Keep in touch with us.
Well.
You're welcome to come on anytime. We always
Great.
like
I
to talk.
appreciate it. Love being here.
All right. Hey, we're live at Black Hat. We're going to take a break. I've got the cybersecurity gal, I think, on her way up to the studio, and we'll be interviewing her next.
Awesome.
Yeah. This is Alex Schimmel for Techstrong TV. Thank you. Take care. Hey everyone, we're live here back in Las Vegas for Black Hat 2024. You know, it's been a crazy first day of interviews in the expo hall. We've had amazing people coming up talking about a whole bunch of everything. What really amazes me, well, I'm going to tell you what really amazes me in a second. First, let me introduce you to my guest. I want to introduce you to Caitlin Sarian.
Yeah.
Okay, I got it almost.
Nailed it.
Okay. Caitlin, some of you may know her as cybersecurity gal.
Yeah, cybersecurity girl.
Cybersecurity girl, excuse me.
I could be gal, but it's
Nah,
not, that's
girl
not the
sounds
handle.
girl sounds more official. And well, Caitlin, I did my part. Now you do your part.
Yeah.
And, you know, tell us about yourself.
Yeah, so I wasn't always a social media influencer. I never thought I'd be a social media influencer.
You
but
didn't go to school for that.
We didn't, it wasn't a thing when I was growing up
No.
either. We didn't have technology until I was in high school. I just aged myself a little bit. But I did cybersecurity consulting, so I actually did aerospace engineering before I even started cybersecurity.
So you're a rocket science. Rocket scientist.
Somehow, I don't ever say that. I don't think it's there. But I was really interested in tech consulting, and when I was going into looking at jobs, I looked at EY, and they said they were starting a cybersecurity practice. I did not tell them that I did not like coding. I was like, sure, that sounds interesting.
great.
And that was more than 11 years ago, and I've just learned everything on the job.
Fantastic.
So one of the reasons why I started my social media channel is I kind of climbed the corporate ladder. It got to COVID. Everyone was kind of stuck at their house, and it really made me think about my life. And I was like, what am I doing with my life? And I really felt like I wasn't giving back, and I didn't really have like a full purpose. I was helping a lot of companies protect data, but I wasn't helping people, and I ultimately always wanted to help people. And so I decided to start a social media channel. Never did I think that it was going to go to this extent, but there were 3 reasons. The first was to kind of educate the people on how to be safe online, just the general public.
Yep.
But the main 2 reasons were to demystify what cybersecurity was to people, because no one really knows what it entails. They just think that you have to be a genius and you have to know how to hack, and that's it.
One or the other, and they're not
And I'm
necessarily
neither
the
of those. So that didn't happen. And then the other one was really to get more women excited about cyber and STEM fields, because like I said, I was an aerospace engineer, so there
Also-
was no women.
Yeah,
really
I was going to say, also
when I
not a
went-
big women industry,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
Yeah, so I'm just excited to be here.
You know, it's funny listening to you. So my wife's family, God bless them.
Yeah.
I'm in cybersecurity 28 years, maybe 30. They still don't know what it is and what I do.
Right.
All they know is, look, he does something with security, with computers. He makes a good living. You know, he takes care of the family.
Fixes the printer sometimes.
Right,
Yeah.
and that's I am the family. Not only fix the printer, I can't log into Disney.
Right.
You know, we go through that with them. Yeah, I am the free
Yeah.
IT help, which is a whole nother story. Anyway, though, what's interesting is is this your first Black Hat? How long have you been coming to Black Hat?
This is my second Black Hat, because I did more like corporate EY side, so I always go to RSA.
Sure.
And again, I'm not like the coding hacker type, and also as a consultant, you didn't really like buy a lot of products when you're
Right.
Anyway.
So Black Hat's not your thing.
So Black Hat wasn't my thing, but honestly, I was so excited I went last year and this year. I think the briefings are super
Cool.
super cool.
If you think
Like,
they're cool now, they were a lot cooler in the past.
Really?
Oh yeah.
I think
baby
it's really
stuff.
cool to like sit in a room and know absolutely nothing. And
Well-
like almost every briefing, I'm like, I'm in cyber, I've been in it for now 11, 12 years, and I'm like, I couldn't even understand one sentence that came out of your mouth for the whole hour. But that's how cool cybersecurity is, because there's so many different areas, and people don't realize that you need like so many different types of brain cells and brain
It's
analytics.
like medicine. You got specialties.
Right,
Right?
exactly.
And that's
I think it's more
Cyber-
complex than medicine, in my personal opinion.
well, I think with all the AI stuff out there, it's going to be easier to have AIs
right.
almost replace doctors, because
Yeah.
they'll be a lot better diagnosing stuff given the facts. Cybersecurity, there's a lot of intuitiveness and personal to it. But, you know, I've been coming to Black Hat now since about 2003, 2004.
Wow.
It used to be over in Caesars.
Okay, that's what I heard.
Yeah, and they didn't have a big expo hall with all the vendors. Whatever vendors were there, it was in the hallway. You had like little 10 by 10 kind of stands.
Right.
And there was briefing rooms. Back then, though, it was really where like new bugs and vulnerabilities and hacks were announced.
Yeah.
So like one year there was a guy named Barnaby Jack. I don't know if you ever heard. He unfortunately passed away, Barnaby Jack, but he was a great guy. brilliant hacker, dude. White hat.
Right.
Great, white. He wheeled an ATM machine out onto the stage and hacked into it and had it spitting money out like it was making it rain money.
See, that would have been an awesome.
Oh, it's
one to
crazy.
do.
There was all kinds of like crazy breakouts, right? That they used to demonstrate live.
Right.
And the other thing back then is, it used to be it wasn't one conference, but Black Hat, DEF CON were much more closely together. Aligned. Well, and they still are, but they're not. But it used to be the place where like the feds, the FBI, the NSA, the CIA, DOD, this is where they would come and mingle with the hackers.
Right.
And so it made for an interesting
Dynamic.
Yeah, there was some interesting dynamic. We had the wall of sheep where they'd hack you and put your stuff up.
I've heard about that, and that's one of the reasons why I've
Happened to me.
actively avoided Black Hat, because I don't want to be up there.
No, it happened to me in 2005.
Oh no.
It was terrible. It was my own fault. But anyway, yes. But so Black Hat used to be a lot more interesting. Quite frankly, I'm not surprised how comfortable you are here, because this has become sort of RSA in the desert.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's necessarily a bad thing.
I think RSA has also kind of taken some of Black Hat's, and Black Hat's taken some.
Yeah.
Like they've kind of molded into.
Yeah, they
similar.
merged. Because there's only the audience wants very similar things today, right? Black Hat used to be much more AppSec only focused, but now cybersecurity is so broad, and it's and it's a little bit of everything. But that being said, it's a lot of fun. I mean, for those of us who've been in the industry a long time, it's summer camp, right? That's what everybody calls it, summer camp
really
for
is.
cyber. I don't know if you had a chance to get over to B-Sides.
I haven't yet.
So I think that was
I think it ended
yesterday,
Yeah.
right? Maybe I went to the very first
B-Sides,
B-Sides here. That was the first B-Sides. Was at some little place off the strip here, and I'll never forget. I was like, this is weird. It was like an unconference before unconferences were a thing, but as a matter of fact, that's how I got into DevOps.
Really?
Believe it or not, I was not for that first B-Sides, maybe the third or fourth B-Sides after that, or the fifth. I was the sponsor wrangler for B-Sides. I was in charge of getting this, helping get sponsors and all that. And after B-Sides, I went out to dinner with Gene Kim, who was the founder of Tripwire. This is before Gene became Gene. And he told me about a book he was writing. He showed me, it became known as the Phoenix Project.
Right.
And that's what got me into DevOps, because I was all about security. Anyway, so it's a great show with a great history, but I'm jaded when I look at it. This is your second year. Share with our audience, what are they missing not coming here?
I mean, I think the briefings are really cool. And also, isn't it cool to think that, like, you went to the first B-Sides and now there's B-Sides all over the world? Like, there's a B-Sides in Armenia.
Yes, there is.
Like, I'm Armenian, so I know this, but it was
So it's big to you.
It's a big deal.
Yeah.
And then, like, there's a Black Hat in Saudi Arabia now. There's, like, it's kind of
There's been
expanded.
1,000 B-Sides
Yeah.
over the last however many years it is. Jack Daniel recently posted on his Facebook. And there, back when I was doing, like, I used to do, besides RSA San Francisco, RSA APAC in Singapore, and there was an RSA usually in London we'd go to. Black Hat is always in like Hong Kong or Shanghai. There's
Singapore. Was there one in Singapore?
There might have been a Black Hat APAC in Singapore. RSA was always in Singapore. But there probably was Black Hat there too. I mean, these are global brands now.
Right.
And it talks to how big cybersecurity is as an industry, right? I will tell you, for people who want to be in this industry, right? I think you do a great job of kind of showing people a peek inside, if you will. It's an industry that A, needs people, B, needs people of diversity desperately,
Yeah.
and C, it's fun. I mean, we co-sponsored a party last night down here at the.
Where was my invite?
You didn't get it because the
that
cybersecurity marketing professionals were all invited. Gianna sent out an invite.
Oh, maybe I missed it.
Well, we were only one of 5 co-sponsors
giving
at
you
the
a hard
pool.
time.
That made me feel guilty.
No, I'm
Actually,
kidding.
we needed people
Honestly,
to come.
I was just talking about how I don't want to go to any of the parties because I'm just tired. After a long day of learning and meeting people. And
so that's the thing you learn at Las Vegas conventions. No, how many? I don't know if you don't have an Apple Watch on, but I track my steps and I got my Oura Ring. And
yeah, Oura Ring.
do you track how many steps you put in a day over here?
I haven't looked yet, but
So I did about 15,000 yesterday, which for me is a lot of steps.
yeah, it's a lot of steps.
I don't know. Today I've been in here mostly, so I haven't had a chance to watch. The night's still young. But the other thing I will tell you about Black Hat this year, and last year too for that matter, it's 115 degrees out, or
Yeah,
112
it's
degrees.
a nice breezy day.
I will never sponsor a pool party at Black Hat again.
Why? Why did you do
Why?
that?
I don't know what I was thinking, but we had a tent and it had like a mister.
Oh, okay.
So every couple minutes, I felt like the broccoli at the supermarket produce thing, you know, when they make them wet.
Could be the broccoli, I'll be the carrot.
Exactly. But yeah, never do that again. You know, for our people, again, people watching this, from your perspective, we got the briefings, which are really cool.
Yeah.
What about, have you had a chance to go on the expo floor?
I mean, the expo floor is so fun, and what a lot of people love, like when they first get here, is all the freebies that you get.
Yep.
But I just love seeing all the new startups, new technologies, and like the new offerings that current companies are giving as well. So I kind of just pretend like I'm a nobody. I usually kind of like flip around my badge and just like walk around and just pretend like I know nothing, and just honestly, I take it as
Soak
another
it in.
learning experience and just soaking it in and like meeting. And then, like you said, it's like summer camp, right? You just get to meet really cool people that you don't normally get to see ever. I mean, when do you ever get to see cybersecurity professionals? It seems like there's a lot of us. But there's not a lot of us.
When there's, well, in this concentration, right? In this amount. So, okay, I got to ask you the obvious question then.
Yeah.
What's caught your eye this year?
Oh man, there's been a lot. Honestly, I've been overwhelmed today with what's caught my eye. I also feel like there's a lot of the same stuff. I don't know, and it could be a.
No, there is.
And then obviously we have the AI buzzwords that everyone's like, oh, we're using AI. When honest, they used AI last year. They just didn't say it because it wasn't as big of a deal.
No, this year, this is the year for AI, no doubt. But to be fair, it was the same thing at RSA.
Yeah, there was a company I literally just talked to like right before I came here, that they are kind of using like a similar technology to blockchain to make sure that like critical infrastructure is protected. So if there was a ransomware incident, you'd be able to like pull it would be able to tell you what happened before you even found out it was a ransomware, because you would know before someone sent you a ransom. And I thought that was really cool to think, because if we're talking about cyber warfare, like that's like our biggest issue right now. And I mean, if we have that ability to see our critical infrastructure and see what's going in and out before it goes in and out for a ransomware attack or any type of attack, that's huge.
That is huge. You're right.
Yeah.
It is huge. And that's interesting. Because critical infrastructure was always one of the big, kind of things here. I will tell you, you said something, and it's been a theme we've heard actually from a few guests today. Everybody's looking for what's new in security. What's the next magic bullet? Well, there is no magic bullets. Stop believing in magic bullets.
Yeah.
But there are incremental things going on, like API security, right? 2 years ago, API security was about just knowing what APIs you have.
Right.
Now it's gone to the next level. I know what APIs I have. How do I lock them down? What's their current posture? How do I report? How do I instrument it?
Right.
So much improvement in security is evolutionary, not revolutionary. So if someone looks at it, they say, well, I don't see a lot different.
Right.
You almost got to take that long view and say, wow, 3, 4, 5 years ago, it wasn't. It was very different.
That's true. And I don't get very technical anymore from that sense. So I honestly believe that you're only as strong as your weakest link. And I always believe that, no offense, but our people are our weakest link, which is why I'm so passionate about, like, I hate saying cybersecurity awareness because I want to bang my head against the wall and like say, if I say you need a strong password one more time, I'm just going to go
So
to
I don't
room.
say that anymore.
Yeah.
I say get rid of passwords.
Yeah. Passwordless.
We need to move on from passwords, because it's, look, I've been a password manager user Since 2005, when I got hacked here.
Yeah.
That's when I stopped. I said, I'll
where you
never
drew the
do
line.
that again. Well,
Not going to be a sheep anymore.
right. Sometimes you gotta get hit on the head,
Yeah.
especially when you're stubborn and dumb sometimes. But it's so hard because like you, I've recommended password managers to so many people who aren't cyber, professionals. And for whatever reason, people just hate them.
Yeah.
They like to pick the same password and something simple to remember. And this is why we get all the hacks. But I'll tell you something else, though. I have it on my desk at home, a pile about this thick of notices I've gotten in the last 4 months.
Yeah.
With free credit monitoring.
Right.
Makes no difference what my password is when Marine Max, where I bought my boat from,
Right.
they were hacked. Their entire database of social security numbers, phone numbers, everything.
Right.
I'm like, beyond my,
Right.
it's bumming. That was just the latest one. I forgot how, I've gotten 3 in the last month.
Yeah. That's
And I think, again, especially to your audience, people get numb.
Yeah, very numb, and but you can't get numb though. That's the issue.
That's what they're counting on.
I know.
That's what the bad guys are counting on.
I strongly believe that cybersecurity starts at home even before it goes into corporate. Like I think there's a huge missing element of like we need to educate users at home to help them understand, because a lot of the reasons why even these hacks are happening at where you bought your boat. It's because these users aren't educated because no one cares about cybersecurity in that small company. Like it's the small businesses that are also getting breached. Like if we start addressing this and explaining how important it is for cybersecurity awareness at home, and I don't want to say awareness, but like just education on what
Hygiene.
is
Cybersecurity hygiene.
Yeah, cyber hygiene, and like why it's important and like why it's relevant to them, and really just demystify like, ooh, cybersecurity is not that complicated if you break it down.
A lot of it's
hygiene is
common
very
sense.
easy, but no one is teaching it. But CISA actually just put out their like 4 recommendations, which I think is really cool. They made it in like a Schoolhouse Rock type of video. But it just needs to be, I personally believe there should be like a cybersecurity kind of hygiene in schools. And it's not even just hygiene of like passwords and stuff, but like kids, you would actually think that adults are the ones that are the worst, but actually kids are the worst with technology because they're born and raised with it, so they just blindly trust it.
It's not that they blindly trust it, because I've studied this.
Oh, okay. Let's
You know
hear
what
it.
the problem is?
What?
They have no expectation of privacy. There's nothing you could steal from them
Right.
because it's all out there anyway.
Right.
You put up pictures of me, take my pictures, take my pictures. You want to take my stuff, I don't got stuff anyway.
Right.
They don't have an expectation of privacy, so they don't protect their privacy as a result.
Got it.
It's only when they get older that they got stuff to worry about.
Yeah. The amount of people that have asked me if I can delete their data off of certain sites.
Yeah, sure.
It's a lot.
Good luck, yeah.
It's a lot. I'm like, no, I'm sorry. It's out there.
You know
It's-
what? So I get all these letters they pay
Yeah.
for credit monitoring, and then the next thing you get from the experience of the world is, let us take you off these people finder sites.
Yeah.
All right, go ahead. And every month I get a report. You were on 7 sites last month. We took you off 2. The next month we took you off those 4, but there were 12 more. It's a whack-a-mole game.
It's whack-a-mole.
So
I'll play the game because I don't want people having my
No,
information.
look. If Marine Max or whoever's paying for my coverage, go ahead.
Yeah.
But or AT&T, and I'm trying to think of the other one I've gotten recently. But anyway, it is. But you're about the 5th person that we've interviewed today that mentioned CISA.
They're doing a good job.
They're doing a great job. You know what? I'm usually not a big fan of the government getting involved because they don't have a clue. But this current iteration, this administration, CISA, is dead on. I think they're doing a great job. They're putting out great content. They're coming out with great ideas. And I think by doing so, they're helping to accelerate industry adoption and people's adoption of good cyber habits.
Right.
I just worry with the next election, will everything get undone? Will the Supreme Court a couple of weeks ago in the Chevron case said, well, these agencies don't really have the authority to go beyond their mandates. So are those someone going to sue saying CISA can't tell us to use S-bombs?
Right.
It's,
I think there needs to be more cybersecurity professionals in like the government. in general.
Well, CISA hires
doesn't.
good people.
Well, I meant like even in like Congress, Senate.
Oh yeah, well
There
you
needs-
can see
they
that.
need to be-
You see the people here at Black Hat. You think they're running for Congress?
No, but I mean, the issue is like if our biggest issue, in my personal opinion, is cyber warfare. That's why the whole TikTok thing blew up, and there's so many other issues besides TikTok. But like if we are trying to conquer that and tackle that, why is no one in any of the seats
Because
have
you know what?
tech savviness at all? Like they're not tech savvy.
They're not. I mean, traditionally, what we've seen are these, blue ribbon panels
Right.
of cyber experts who advise.
Also, where do they get those people? Because
So,
most of those people I've never
met-
heard of.
I got to tell you, Richard Clark was an amazing person, and he ran, I think, for 2 different presidents. He was like their cybersecurity
Okay.
person. He was really smart, but he was only one man.
Yeah, I was gonna say they
One
have like a
man
group of
isn't going to
people.
do it, right? I would love to see, and maybe it's a CISA thing, if they have the authority under
Yeah.
this new thing, to set up. And I think that's what's made CISA really successful, by the way. They haven't just like sat on top and tried to dictate.
Right.
They've worked industry and government in a partnership to do a lot of these things. I think that's the right approach.
Yeah. I do know there's a girl named Madison Horn who's like running for, I think, Oklahoma Senate, and she's like was in cybersecurity and
Really?
privacy. And
Well,
I'm
there
like,
you have it.
yeah.
Madison Horn for
Yeah.
Senate in
I know.
Oklahoma.
I was like really excited. I talked to her because I met her 2 years ago at RSA, and she was like, "Yeah, I think I'm going to try to run." I'm like, "You should run." And then she called me.
need 'em.
We had a call like last week or something, and I was just so excited. She's like full blown going.
I think it, it's the same old, same old. Look, the people who watch this are techie people, they're
Right,
cyber people.
right.
It's not even them. Will the people who aren't cyber people really give a crap enough to
But I
elect
think-
someone?
But that's like what we need to show. Is like everything involves cyber. Every part
Look,
of our
if
life
you got
involves
stuck
cyber.
on the airplanes a couple weeks ago, it's a cyber thing. So, yeah.
Like everything we do is with technology, right? Which always involves cyber. Some type of cyber aspect, some type of privacy aspect. We can't live our life unless we're living under a rock, which we can't even do anymore. Honestly, they'd still find us. But like, unless we're living under a rock, then we wouldn't have cyber. But there's cyber ingrained in every single aspect of our life.
I'll tell you the key. I was a political science major in college. People vote pocketbook.
Yeah.
They voted for pocketbook issues.
It's
You
true.
need to make cyber a pocketbook issue.
Oh, we can make that. an
Oh, I
issue.
think it already
It
is.
already
and
is.
People don't realize the tax they pay as a result of bad cyber.
Right.
Anyway, Caitlin, we're about out of time. This was great.
Yeah.
I want to thank you for coming up here and well, at least it's air conditioned in our suite.
Yeah, it's great.
Enjoy Black Hat.
Thank you for having me.
Tell people if they want to follow you on the various platforms. Look
Yeah.
into this one, I guess.
Yeah, so
How do they do that?
Yeah, if you want to follow me, you want cybersecurity education tips, or you want to get into cybersecurity yourself, or you want to share it with family and friends, my Instagram and my TikTok are at cybersecurity no space, just all one word. Also, you can find me at Caitlin Sarian on LinkedIn. But yeah, my whole job is to just educate and train the public on being safe online and getting more people into cyber and just educating us on why
What a
it's
great
important.
job.
So,
Good for you, man.
Yeah, thank you so much.
All right. Hey, that's going to wrap up our day one coverage here at Black Hat. We hope you've enjoyed it. We have more for you coming tomorrow. But for now, we're going to go check out, well, I'm not going to go check out. It's too hot out there. But we're going to take it easy. Have a great day. Enjoy, everyone. This is Alan Schimmel for Techstrong.
Bye, everyone.